Hey, before we start, I want to ask you something simple. When people say freedom, what do they actually mean?
That's a good question because we use this word all the time, but we rarely stop to define it.
Exactly. It sounds powerful, emotional, but also very vague.
And that's why today's word is freedom.
At its most basic level, freedom means the ability to choose, to decide how you live, what you think, where you go, and who you become without being controlled by force, fear, or coercion. But that simple definition hides something important. Freedom is not just about absence of rules, absence of control, absence of restrictions. It's also about the presence of opportunity, safety, and dignity. You can technically be free on paper, but still trapped by poverty, violence, discrimination, or lack of education. So freedom is not only about what is allowed, it's about what is possible.
So freedom isn't just no one is stopping you?
Exactly. If no one stops you, but you still cannot act, cannot speak safely, cannot dream realistically, that freedom is incomplete. This is why philosophers often say freedom has two sides: freedom from oppression, fear, and control. Freedom to grow, express, learn, and participate. And many societies focus only on the first, while ignoring the second.
Freedom is often discussed in political terms, constitutions, rights, laws. But in real life, people experience freedom emotionally. Freedom feels like being able to speak without fear, choosing your education or career, loving who you love, moving without needing permission, not having to hide who you are. That's why people fight for it, not because it's an abstract idea, but because it touches daily life.
That explains why the word feels so heavy.
Yes, freedom carries hope, loss, anger, and longing all at once. And for many people, freedom is not something they debate, it's something they miss.
One of the biggest misunderstandings is thinking freedom means doing whatever you want. But real freedom is never unlimited. Every society places boundaries. The question is who sets them, why, and who they protect. When freedom exists without fairness, it benefits only the powerful. When it exists with responsibility, it becomes something shared.
So freedom isn't one single thing.
No, it comes in different forms, and understanding those differences changes how we see the world.
Then let's break it down.
When most people hear the word freedom, the first thing they think of is personal freedom. This is the freedom of the individual, the right to make choices about your own life. Personal freedom includes things like how you dress, what you believe, what you study, or work and how you spend your time, what values guide your decisions. At its core, personal freedom is about autonomy, being the author of your own life. But personal freedom is fragile. It can be limited not only by laws, but by culture, family pressure, gender expectations, and fear of judgment.
So someone can be legally free but still not personally free?
Exactly. A person may live in a country with freedom, but still feel trapped by expectations, shame, or constant monitoring. That's why personal freedom often starts internally with the courage to choose differently.
Social freedom is about how freely you can exist in society without being excluded or punished. It answers questions like, can you speak without being silenced? Can you participate without being marginalized? Can you belong without hiding who you are? Social freedom is deeply connected to identity, gender, ethnicity, religion, language, class. When social freedom is weak, people learn to shrink themselves. They speak less, dream smaller, accept disrespect as normal. And over time, that loss of freedom becomes invisible but very real.
That sounds like something people adapt to without realizing.
Yes, the most dangerous limits on freedom are the ones people stop questioning.
Political freedom is what we usually hear about in news and history. It refers to the ability to participate in power. This includes freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to vote, freedom to criticize leaders. Political freedom determines whether people are subjects or citizens. But political freedom isn't just about elections. It's about whether voices matter between elections.
So voting alone doesn't guarantee freedom?
Not at all. If people are afraid to speak, organize, or question authority, political freedom becomes symbolic, not real.
Economic freedom is often ignored, but it shapes everything. It includes access to work, fair wages, financial independence, the ability to survive without constant insecurity. Without economic freedom, other freedoms become theoretical. You may have the right to speak, but no time. The right to choose, but no resources. The right to dream, but no safety net.
So poverty itself limits freedom.
Absolutely. When survival becomes a priority, freedom becomes a luxury. That's why discussions of freedom that ignore economics are incomplete.
Here's an uncomfortable truth. Freedom is not experienced equally. Two people can live in the same city and experience completely different levels of freedom based on gender, wealth, education, or legal status. That's why freedom is not just a personal idea. It's a social responsibility.
The more you explain this, the more complex the word becomes.
It has to be. Because real freedom is never simple and never free of consequences.
Then I guess the next question is, what does freedom demand in return?
One of the most common misunderstandings about freedom is the idea of absolute freedom, the belief that being free means doing whatever you want, whenever you want, without limits. In reality, absolute freedom does not exist in human societies. The moment we live among others, freedom becomes relational. Your freedom touches someone else's life. This is where responsibility enters the conversation, quietly but firmly.
So freedom always comes with boundaries?
Yes, not because freedom is weak, but because humans are connected. Freedom without responsibility doesn't create independence, it creates harm.
Responsibility is not the opposite of freedom. It is the structure that makes freedom possible. Think about it this way. Freedom is the power to choose. Responsibility is the awareness of impact. When responsibility is missing, freedom becomes reckless. When freedom is missing, responsibility becomes obedience. Healthy societies require both.
That's interesting, responsibility as something that protects freedom, not restricts it.
Exactly. True freedom asks a difficult question. What are the consequences of my choice not only for me, but for others?
At a personal level, freedom means taking responsibility for your decisions. Blaming others may feel comforting, but it limits freedom. If someone else controls the cause, they control the outcome. Inner freedom grows when a person says, "This is my life, and I will take ownership of it." This does not mean ignoring injustice. It means recognizing where your power begins.
So responsibility gives people agency?
Yes, it shifts people from victims of circumstance to participants in their own lives. That shift is subtle, but transformative.
Freedom of speech is often discussed without responsibility. But words are powerful. They shape beliefs, emotions, and actions. Responsible freedom of speech means speaking truthfully, understanding context, recognizing impact. It does not mean silence, it means intention.
So being free to speak doesn't mean being careless?
Exactly. Carelessness weakens freedom by creating fear, division, and mistrust.
Freedom is also collective. A society where only some people are free is not truly free. Freedom grows when people protect not only their own rights, but others' rights as well. This is why freedom movements often include words like justice, dignity, equality. Because freedom without fairness is unstable.
Here is something rarely said. Freedom is emotionally demanding. It requires courage, accountability, uncertainty. Being free means making choices and living with the outcomes. Some people prefer control, rules, or dependence because freedom feels heavy.
That explains why freedom can be scary.
Yes, freedom removes excuses, and that can be uncomfortable.
History shows that people sometimes trade freedom for security, comfort, predictability. When life feels unstable, freedom can feel like a burden. That's why freedom must be supported by education, fairness, and trust.
So freedom isn't just a right. It's a responsibility, a skill, even a burden.
Exactly. And the way we talk about freedom, especially in English, reflects how deeply we understand it.
Then the language itself matters.
Freedom is one of those words that sounds simple, but carries enormous weight. In English, the way freedom is used tells us how seriously it is being taken. Sometimes it appears emotional and inspirational. Other times it appears formal, legal, or academic. Understanding these differences helps learners move from basic vocabulary to meaningful expression.
So it's not just knowing the word, it's knowing how to use it?
Exactly. Using the word freedom well shows maturity, awareness, and depth.
In daily conversation, freedom often appears casually. People say things like, I finally have some freedom. I don't feel free in that job. She values her freedom. Here, freedom usually means personal choice or lack of pressure. It's emotional, it's subjective, and it's often tied to lifestyle.
So it's more about feelings than systems?
Yes, everyday English focuses on experience, not structure.
In academic English, freedom becomes more precise. You'll see it connected to ideas like rights, autonomy, democracy, expression, mobility. Sentences often sound like this. Freedom of expression is a fundamental human right. Academic freedom supports critical inquiry. Economic freedom influences market behavior. Notice the tone. Neutral, analytical, structured.
It sounds less emotional but more powerful.
Exactly. Academic language removes emotion to focus on cause, effect, and principle.
Advanced English learners often notice two words, freedom and liberty. They are related but not identical. Freedom is broader and more personal. Liberty is more legal and political. For example, personal freedom, civil liberties. Understanding this distinction helps in essays, debates, and formal discussions.
In media and politics, freedom is often persuasive. It's used to inspire, justify actions, create unity. You'll hear phrases like fighting for freedom, protecting our freedom, freedom under threat. This usage is emotional and symbolic. It appeals to values, not just logic.
So freedom can be used strategically?
Yes, that's why critical listening matters.
In professional contexts, freedom often appears as autonomy. For example, employees value creative freedom. This role offers flexibility and independence. Here, freedom means trust, responsibility, self-direction. Not chaos, not absence of rules.
Many learners use freedom only in emotional ways. They might say, I want freedom. But advanced English asks, freedom from what? Freedom to do what? Freedom for whom? Precision matters.
So adding context makes the word stronger.
Always. Context turns vocabulary into thought.
For many people, especially migrants, women, and marginalized groups, freedom is tied to identity. Language reflects this: freedom to choose, freedom to speak, freedom to exist. These phrases are not abstract. They come from lived experience. Understanding this adds emotional intelligence to your English.
So freedom is not just a word, it's a mirror of values, power, and experience.
Exactly. And when you use this word thoughtfully, your English becomes more human, not just more correct.
Before we finish, take a quiet moment and think about what freedom means to you. Not the dictionary meaning your own meaning, shaped by your experiences, choices, and limits.
Because freedom is not the same for everyone. And understanding that is part of learning both language and life.
If today's episode helped you see the word freedom more clearly, carry it with you into your conversations, your writing, and your thinking.
Learning English is not only about words, it's about understanding the ideas behind them.
Thank you for spending this time with us.
And we'll meet you again in the next episode of Everyday English.